Welcome to another episode of my book reviews. For the ones who don't know me in person, I am very thankful that you watched this video and that you clicked on the preview. I'm Selma and I've been reading non-fiction book for the past 10 years. But I don't know everything. I'm also still trying to figure this out, but I want to figure this out together. So let's dive into the book of this week. The book of this week is The Culture Map. This book is so interesting. I grew up in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, so I was around a lot of cultures, but my origin also lies in Morocco. And from a young age, I've witnessed cultural differences. The first time when I experienced this in Morocco, I really felt like I was a Dutchie, because then I was like, it's such a waste of time for me to come here when it's not open. But at the same time, they have a different pace of living, of doing things. They really enjoy their time. They love being with family, so that is also really admirable. It's good to know those differences in culture. And the same applies to business. This book is written by Erin Meyer. She is a professor at a European business school. So she talks with a lot of business executives, managers, and from all over the world, globally. And they even ask her for advice within a team, let's say. So her job is pretty amazing. She just advises people about communicating together and working as a team. Amazing. She gives really practical examples. She has interviewed and talked with a lot of people across the globe. I will also highlight some differences between countries. Now, I do want to have a disclaimer, not to say that everyone in that country has the same characteristics. So it's good to know that in business, if you want to take your career global, companies are global right now. They take on a team in another country, and then a manager has to manage that team from a different country. Then you need to know those cultural differences. So this is a note to you and a note to self, that whenever I'm managing division in a different country, then I need to go back to this book. So I need to watch this video myself. Yeah, and I also want to have another disclaimer. I'm going to do a lot of disclaimers here. And then when we get everything out of the way, we can discuss the actual book itself. So the other disclaimer is that few countries or many countries have been considered in this book, but I do feel that there are so many other countries, of course, to consider here in this book. For example, the continent of Africa has not been mentioned too much in the book, and I feel like it is such a rich continent with so many different countries trying to innovate in terms of business. So I do feel like those countries also can be highlighted in a book similar like this. Okay, so let's dive into this book. So Erin divides these cultural differences into 8 skills. The 8 skills are communicating, evaluating, persuading, leading, deciding, trusting, disagreeing, and scheduling. So I'm not going to discuss all of those 8 skills, so I'm just going to focus on the aspects that were most insightful for me. Are you ready? Let's dive in. The first thing was about giving feedback, and it is so funny to read this book because, as I said, I'm Moroccan, but I grew up in the Netherlands, so I'm also Dutch, and I could relate to this so much because the Dutch are so frank in giving feedback. They don't necessarily think there's a hierarchy, or you can just blurt everything out in front of a team. And that is fine, but it was different from what I was used to, I would say, in a Moroccan household. In a Moroccan household, we are also frank and we also give each other feedback, but not necessarily as direct as the Dutch are. And I feel like, for example, she compares the Dutch, for example, with British people. The Brits are also frank in their feedback, but they have more subtleties. So she has an example. So she had a group of different executives, and there were two Dutch people, let's call them person A and person B, and there were also some Americans in this group. Person A, so a Dutch person, explained his situation. He had an encounter with an employee and he was wondering how he could have assessed and acted different upon that situation. So he asked feedback from the group. And then person B, the other Dutch person, went in with direct feedback, and he basically said, you handled the situation all wrong and you're basically getting cancelled if you act like this. And he said it in front of the group. You could see that, okay, I was not there, but Erin describes that in that moment she could see that person getting a bit agitated and getting a bit defensive about that feedback. So they got into a discussion, not a heated discussion, but just a discussion. And she could see that this person B was a little uncomfortable. Afterwards, the Americans came to Erin and they said, oh, we feel so bad for this person A, and we did not know how to handle that situation because they were not used to someone else giving another person that direct feedback within a team. And then Erin really got in her head about it, and she really thought about what to do and how to handle the situation. Afterwards, in the evening, they went for drinks all together, and Erin decided that she wanted to talk to person A and B about the situation. So when she got into the bar, she saw person A and B sitting together at the bar having drinks together. So she was so flabbergasted, like, you two had a discussion and now you're having drinks together being the best of friends. So she went up to person A, person B, and then she asked them, what were your thoughts about the situation? And person A said, yeah, he didn't necessarily like the comments he received from person B, but he appreciated the fact that he was being honest to him and he gave him feedback that he could implement in that situation. So that is the first example of how things might be viewed differently from people from different countries. So it's really, really important, because if you want to be a team player and you're Dutch and you want to be a team player in an international team and you're giving direct feedback, someone else might think you're just being a little too direct and a little rude, so they might kick you off the team. And that also goes into another topic, which is you have to listen into the air. You might think, what is listening into the air? The air is not speaking and the air is not giving me things to listen to. But it is. In some countries, it is. Okay, so low context is good communication, is precise, simple, and clear. Messages are expressed and understood at face value. Repetition is appreciated if it helps clarify the communication. High context. Good communication is sophisticated, nuanced, and layered. Messages are both spoken and read between the lines. Messages are often implied but not plainly expressed. And she also talks about different groups of low context and high context countries. And the person from the low context country said, okay, let's have a meeting, and someone, a team member, is gonna put everything into the notes and then email everyone about what their to-dos are, because that is really concise, that is really clear for everyone to know what their action plan is. A person from a high context country is going to consider that as rude, because why? We've already discussed everything in the meeting. Why would someone else put everything in the notes, email it to me as if I don't know what my job is? As if someone else doesn't trust me and wants to put everything in paper and writing. So that is like a subtle difference. So let me give you another difference. And that is not related to business. It's just really funny because I read it here in the book, but I was also like, I understand this. I live this in real life. So for example, when you go to an Arab household and they offer you food or something else, you always basically say no. Because it's considered rude if you immediately say yes, because then otherwise your parents would be like, you're acting like we don't have food at home and you're acting like you're starving. So chill a little bit. So the first time you say no, but then you're listening into the air, then you're hearing that other person is saying no out of politeness. And then of course you've prepared food, it's already in the kitchen, so the other person is gonna say, no, it's nothing, I'm gonna give you the food. And then me as a guest, I would say, no, it's really fine, it's okay. And then the third time when someone asks you, oh yes, I'm gonna prepare the food, it's okay, I can just put it on the table, then you say, okay, let's eat together. Maybe someone from a non-Arab household would think, okay, you're coming to someone's house, someone is offering you food and you say no, and then that person is asking you again. Why would that person ask you again if you've already said no? It would be weird for someone else. It is so straightforward for me because I have lived that. Another one is decision making. So Americans are really quick. They really want to bring their products into market really fast. They want to be the first. That is also ingrained in their decision making. And their decision making, as a result, is really fast. But afterwards, they can pivot. They can change their decision that they made quickly together. Germans, on the contrary, cannot do that. They think about that decision, they contemplate with the team when there is a change in the decision, and they come together as a team to really form that decision. That period takes a long time, but afterwards, when that decision is being made by the team, it's not changeable. It's fixed. Nobody can change that decision. So they are really quick in implementing. You see, if there's a German team and an American team coming together, the American team makes a decision, the German team agrees on it, and then afterwards the American team changes that decision slightly, the Germans would not understand. And they would say, Americans cannot make a decision. They're not decisive. The other way around, when Americans really want to make a decision quickly, but the Germans want to communicate everything, they want to schedule a meeting because there was a change in the decision, and then it takes a long time, Americans will say Germans are indecisive because they cannot make a decision quickly. So you see where this contrary is, and that is the thing that you really have to be aware of. How is your team making decisions, and is that decision fixed, or can you pivot a little? Okay, and the last thing I want to talk to you about is trusting. When you do business with people, you want to be able to trust them at a certain extent. But that certain extent is for some countries here and for other countries here. And for example, I'm going to use the Americans again for my example. So there was this merger going on with an American group and a Brazilian group. The Americans, they have prepared, they know what their targets are, and they went to travel to the Brazilians to meet each other and to discuss business. And the end goal was to make a deal. They would not leave Brazil if they hadn't made a deal with the Brazilians. So they traveled, and then there was this pleasantries, and then they were invited for lunch. They were not getting into the business. As the first lunch stretched on, we started looking at our watches and shifting around in their chairs. We were worried about how we were possibly going to complete what we needed to accomplish. We wondered in the middle of these socializing marathons if the Brazilians were really taking these negotiations seriously. So the Americans thought the Brazilians were not respecting their time and they're not moving effectively. But the other way around, the Brazilians really wanted to get to know the person first before they were doing business together. For Brazilians, it's really important to get to know someone in order to do business. They cannot just rely on the facts. They really also have to rely on the person that they're doing business with and that they're signing agreements with. So they have to get to know each other. And then on the contrary, the Brazilians also went to the United States, and the Americans, they scheduled everything really productively and efficiently. So they were having meetings back to back with different divisions and different departments, and even their lunch was in this meeting room, and it felt like they were on a rat race. They were like moving quickly. And afterwards the Brazilians thought, okay, why are we only meeting about business stuff when we're not even getting to know the person? Also, another tip I want to leave you with, of course, it's all in a book and you can review it, but I think if you really want to understand someone and if you really want to respect and come together and really work together, then you also have to ask people about their communication style, about their style of giving feedback. Just really get to know each other. Talk to another person. I know it's hard, but we really have to come closer to each other and form bonds. And if you don't know something, or if you are curious about something, just ask. Just ask politely, just ask respectfully, and then we can also always come together. Okay, so that is what I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed all of these insights. It's a practical book. Again, I would love for some other countries to be added into this book. It was a nice feeling of nostalgia, and I also gained some new insights on doing business. So whenever I go international with my career, I know what to do. Okay, I will see you on the next one.